Greetings, Internet, and welcome to another episode of Underappreciated Characters, where I sing praise for fictional characters that I feel, at least partly, deserve more recognition and appreciation. And this is one that I decided I initially wanted to dedicate specifically to Mother's Day, but I decided, hey, why wait that long? I already talked about one of the two voice acting roles Julia Louis-Dreyfus did for Pixar in a previous Underappreciated Characters video where I talked about Princess Ada from A Bug's Life, so I want to take some time to give some attention to her other Pixar role as one of the most kick-ass cartoon moms in recent memory. Besides, she already has had to put up with enough crap for She-Hulk when she's got so many more great credits under her belt, so why not shed some light on those? Now, both Onward and A Bug's Life are two select films that are often seen as more underwhelming entries in Pixar's filmography, but I personally have fond attachments to both and see quite a bit of value in them. Onward was the last film I saw on the big screen just before lockdown happened. Ironically, what was most likely the biggest reason for it being a flop at the box office, even though its opening weekend wasn't great to start with. And while yes, it felt very much like a comfort zone level for Pixar, is that really such a crime? After all, to quote Anton Ego from Ratatouille, the bitter truth that critics must face is that the most average piece of junk probably has more value than their criticism designates. In fact, in this art of book right here, this is all the iterations of the story that Onward had to go through before it got to the final one that we see today. I'm someone who acknowledges that every film has a tremendous amount of effort put into them, so it doesn't do much good to write one off as being less of a masterpiece than the others. As the saying goes, one's trash is another's treasure. I'm someone who tries to keep a healthy detachment from a work of art, at least regarding my own personal resonance versus the technicals. Detach my own personal biases, if you will. But some films that I think have come out as a bit less solid than others, I've still gone back and revisited multiple times for containing something that resonated with me personally. I was definitely invested in Onward when I first saw it on the big screen, and it's one that I've purchased and revisited a number of times since. While the film was a bit lacking in the world-building department for a story with this kind of fantasy setting, the characters and the relationships strongly make up for it. And Laurel Lightfoot is no exception. To pull a quote from director Dan Scanlon, "Because my mom was such a big part of my life and my brother's life, we wanted to make sure that we weren't telling a story that said every kid needs two parents or that said a single parent wasn't enough. It became really important to all of us that mom is a part of the journey and that she helps the boys too, and she's there for them. It was very emotional for me as we edited her into the story because I realized that it was three of us growing up. We were a team. So when I see Mom and Ian working so hard at the end of the movie to make sure that Barley gets to say goodbye to his dad, it's really much more emotional than the version of the movie when it was just Ian alone with Dad." Pixar has been especially autobiographical with their recent movies, from Onward to Luca to Turning Red. And as such, it's not uncommon for a lot of these stories to include elements based on the creator's and or director's own life, including the trend of protagonists not seeing eye to eye with their parents and or having experienced the loss of at least one of their parents. But it's not like these stories, or even some of the more prominent trends they feature, being more personal from the creators, is anything new, even to the works of Pixar or Disney. The director of Meet the Robinsons, Stefan Anderson, for example, was an orphan himself, just like his lead character Louis. Hans Zimmer, writing his suite for The Lion King, was born out of the passing of his own father. And heck, this even goes all the way back to the story of Walt Disney himself, as his father, Elias, never supported his career as an artist and would implore him to do strenuous child labor out in the cold. And then there's the story of how he lost his own mother, Flora, after buying her a new house only to find out one day that she died inside it from a carbon monoxide leak, which he reportedly blamed himself for and is even rumored to be the source for the common trend of deceased moms throughout Disney's film catalog that they've gotten a bit of a bad rap for. But there are far more examples to the contrary to that trope than they're seemingly given credit for. Mrs. Jumbo, Mrs. Darling from Peter Pan, Darling from Lady and the Tramp, and towards the end even Lady herself, Queen Lee from Sleeping Beauty, the Rabbit Mom from Robin Hood, Sarabi from Lion King, Hera and Hercules' adopted mom from Hercules, Mulan's ma, Jim Hawkins' ma from Treasure Planet, Tiana's mom from Princess and the Frog, the Queen of Corona from Tangled, Hero's mom from Big Hero 6, Bonnie Hops from Zootopia, Abuela from Encanto. Heck, even Disney moms that have more prominent roles in their respective stories like Mrs. Potts, Kanga, Perdita, Duchess, Kala, extending to moms in the department of Pixar, Andy's mom, the Queen Ant in A Bug's Life, Helen Parr / Elastigirl, Eleanor from Brave, Mama Imelda from Coco, And even extending to TV series, Della Duck from the DuckTales reboot, Luce's mom Camila from Owl House, and Anne's mom from Amphibia. I could go on with examples, but if Laurel Lightfoot doesn't satisfy the complainers in their over-exaggerations of the dead or absent Disney mom trope, then I guess nothing will. She makes for one of the best cartoon single mothers I can think of, next to some other non-Disney examples like Mrs. Brisby from The Secret of Nim, Hannah from Wolf Children, and Joanna from Hilda. The earlier drafts of the film had her being the prototypical overprotective parent who is afraid for their kids and tries to stop them, and it would be all too easy to make that the case with her being a single parent and one of her kids being something of a spitting image of her spouse, and she can't bear the idea of experiencing that loss twice, or even 3 times. But Pixar already gave us such examples of overprotective, disapproving parents with Marlin from Finding Nemo, Libba Gardner from Soul, Daniela Pagura from Luca, and even Ming Li from Turning Red. While those parents worked for their respective stories, Laurel Lightfoot is a breath of fresh air. Now, I've made it no secret that I'm very close to my own mom. She's always been my biggest champion in life, as any good mother should be, but even during my stages where I was growing away from her, she was especially supportive of me pursuing a career as an artist, in a world where it's all too common for parents to doubt the possibility that providing any long-term sustainability and try to discourage their kids from pursuing that course. And that's part of the reason I love Laurel. She's a rare example of a parent who is worried for her boys on their dangerous quest, but is still tremendously supportive on seeing them through it. She's pursuing both her boys on this dangerous mission to ensure that they finally get this opportunity that they all know will never come by again. She's still worried about them, as she knows neither one is great at handling crises, with Ian being so timid and awkward and avoidant of all conflict, while Barley is reckless, impulsive, and always charging headfirst into danger. And she knows that they're going to need help in making this a reality. She's also great not just because she's got an amazing level of athleticism to her and can wield a big-ass sword to slay a giant fire-breathing dragon, but she's also really clever and resourceful, like the way she bails out Cory the Manticore from her run-in with the authorities after going awry and burning down her restaurant by pretending to be a health doctor for manticores, and she even becomes friends with Cory at the end for this. The filmmakers said that Ian's relationship with his family is that he feels a bit like the outcast who is struggling to keep up with the rest of them, and that while Laurel has always been there for them, there's this sense of another little piece of his family missing, hence the absence of the dad, Wilton. They said that Laurel's personality seems to lean more towards Barley, as indicated during their first interaction in the movie where they play wrestle, as boys in their late teens are wont to do, and she is the one who gets the upper hand, and they high-five it out. So there's this indication that while Barley is more mom, Ian is more dad. This is even hinted at, not so subtly, throughout the movie, especially when he asks Laurel if Wilton was always as super competent as everyone else who knew him made him out to be, and Laurel responds, "Oh no, it took him for a while to find himself," which is indicative of Ian's coming-of-age journey throughout the movie. But if you look at it even closer, it might also very subtly imply that Laurel, before she married Wilton, might have been his biggest cheerleader and supporter, the way that Barley was to Ian. And if that's the case, the fact that she's continued this cheerleader role to her own boys makes her all the more admirable for it as a mom. Now I can imagine some more cynical minds might feel compelled to write off Laurel as never having loved Wilton in the first place if she's not as apparently shaken up by his absence as her boys are, and is moving on to a new guy, especially if the new guy isn't lining up well with Ian and Barley. Dan Scanlon once again related this to his own experiences where his own mom was dating again, and having a new guy in the house always started off as feeling kind of awkward for a while. But the fact that Laurel has a new boyfriend doesn't mean she's just discarded her memory of her husband. Widows and widowers date and remarry for a variety of reasons. Sometimes for financial support, sometimes it's a matter that the person does have this hole in their soul that's left by the passing of their significant other, and they need someone else, not necessarily to fill that hole, but maybe to help with emotional support. Or maybe, in the case of Laurel's boyfriend being an officer, she is hoping for someone who can be a good support to fall back on and keep her boys safe. Now, Officer Bronco, the centaur, as not good as he is with teens, still means well. True, he's more concerned for Laurel's sake than he is for Ian or Barley's, but at the end of the day, he's on good terms with them just the same, and he's an accepted member of the family. And anyway, I think it's better that he fill the role of the person who tries to stop Ian and Barley on their quest rather than Laurel. If Laurel just stopped caring about Wilton or was just running away from memories of him like nothing happened, do you think that she'd really be fighting to the ends of the earth, even risking life and limb, to help the boys seize their one and only opportunity to see him, even if she herself doesn't get to? Why would she do that instead of just trying to bury all the memories of him? She was indeed affected by his passing and had her own period of grief from it. It's just that she's already gotten her closure with him and was strong enough to carry on raising her boys. And she knows that now it's their turn to get their closure, with Ian having been too young to remember anything about Wilden, and Barley having been scared out of saying a proper goodbye to him when seeing him on his deathbed. And of course, in the end, Barley gets that. Ian didn't, but he didn't really need to, since Barley essentially filled that dad role. Ian got his hello, while Barley got his goodbye. And the whole family, blood relatives and stepdad alike, have grown even stronger and more together from there. Laurel is an example of a mom who is a prominent player in her family that regards itself as a team. Even after the early passing of her husband, rather than being distraught that her family is broken, she remains connected with her boys and always has their backs, even in situations where they get themselves in and over their heads. She's passed on her strengths and better qualities to Barley so that he could be a major guiding force, almost dad figure for Ian. She sees her husband in Ian, but in a way of seeing admiration and inspiration in him rather than as a trauma trigger. And whatever her reason for dating a guy like Officer Bronco, she knows he cares about her and her boys, even though he doesn't start off on the right foot, or hoof rather. But the family comes together in the end, starting off on a strong note, the big dilemma being that Ian is struggling to catch up, and once Ian has caught up and gained more confidence, they're all the stronger at the end for it. It's a sweet and humble journey for the family, and is what I think more families in the world should be striving to be like. But those are just my thoughts. Now feel free to let me know about your thoughts on Onward and its characters, and if there's anything you took away from it, or if you consider it to be one of the less memorable Pixar films. I look forward to hearing from you, and until next time.